Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. The first major event of the NFL offseason set to begin next week. A total of 329 invitations were sent out to the nation's top college football prospects, all looking to boost their draft stock starting on Monday. We'll have a heavy presence out in Indianapolis for CBS, including our Ryan Wilson, who's been tracking these guys since way back even in August, before the season even began. He joins us now ahead of all the fun festivities out in Indianapolis. Ryan's going to do some position breakdowns with us. And Ryan, we got to start with the quarterbacks, because I think the duo at the top that's still in the show, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, we kind of know what we're getting out of them, right? We saw them have successful seasons this past year. I'm curious, though, who you'd put as number 3 when it comes to your top 3 quarterback prospects in Indy next week.
Hey, Haley, good to see you. And that is the $60-70 million question, because there are teams that desperately need quarterbacks after those first 2 guys, Cam and Shedeur, are off the board. And then these young men that come to Indy next week are going to have a chance to help themselves. We saw that in years past. Players who go down there, whether they're playing quarterback or elsewhere, need to run fast times or have great interviews or do things that we didn't necessarily see in the fall. So Jackson Dart is at the top of that list. We saw him down at the Senior Bowl a few weeks ago, and he was good but not great. And then someone else that could really help themselves is my guy Kyle McCord. The guy to represent Syracuse here. He made a huge leap after leaving Ohio State and making his way to Syracuse, and that team was explosive offensively in large part because of him. Quinn Ewers, I sort of wish he had returned to school. He didn't. Will Howard had 2 great games, including the national title game, Haley, and I think that put him on the map. And I've actually talked to teams that think he might get drafted before Quinn Ewers. And I'll mention Jalen Milroe there, number 3. Didn't have a great Senior Bowl. Again, not the end of the world. But if he goes to Indy next week, Haley, and interviews well, we know what he can do athletically and just spins it in terms of throwing the ball really well when he gets that opportunity, I think he'll be back in that conversation, because in terms of what he can do with those physical tools, he is unmatched in this draft class. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
If I had to twist your arm of those guys you just mentioned, is there one name you think that would take over that number 3 spot?
Yeah, Jackson Dart is the favorite in the clubhouse, so to speak. And I think after that, Kyle McCord, he's going to interview really well. We'll have an opportunity to move up as well and perhaps be a day 2 guy. But Jackson Dart transferred from USC. I talked to 4 or 5 of his teammates over the weeks at the Shrine Bowl. Shout out to North Texas and Haley Sutton, and then at the Senior Bowl. And to a person, they could not speak highly enough of Jackson Dart, the team leader, and the guy in the locker room that you look to for leadership. And I think NFL teams understand that as well. No one tougher, perhaps maybe Shedeur Sanders in this draft class, and I think he's going to impress a lot of people. So he's the favorite. But I'm a Kyle McCord fan in much the same way I was a Spencer Rattler fan 12 months ago. So we'll see how it works out for him.
I was going to say, Kyle McCord kind of feels like your Spencer Rattler shtick that you had last year. So we'll keep our eye on Mr. McCord as the draft gets closer. We also saw a few names in the wide receiver room flash this year, and it's always fun, I think, just to see that group, show off their skills, whether it's the 40-yard dash or the gauntlet where they're catching the passes there. Who's a name or a storyline that you can think of that maybe scouts are going to have to think twice about as the combine gets underway next week?
Right. So you watch these guys in the fall, Haley, and you watch them on Saturdays, and some guys look faster than others. No surprise there. And some guys are going to test way faster than perhaps you thought they played. And there are going to be a lot of guys that do that this year. And this draft class won't be quite as deep at the top of the wide receiver position, but it is plenty deep as we get through all 7 rounds. A couple guys I can't wait to see, and I saw this young man in person when Syracuse played Stanford, was their wide receiver out of Stanford, Alec Ayuminor. He's a big, thick wide receiver that plays outside, can also play in the slot. I want to see how fast he is. He's reportedly tested extremely well in the run-up to the draft, that's sort of the pre-draft prep. And he's a 100-meter guy that can move a little bit. We saw him make Bruce Feldman's freak list. I want to see that translate to the field, because I thought he played fast, but I didn't think he was an absolute burner. And he can change opinions pretty quickly next week. And the other guy I want to mention who was a late add to the Senior Bowl out of Arkansas, Isaac Tasla. And he went to Hillsdale College, and I said, wait a second. He went to Hillman, which is a shout out to a different world. He didn't go to Hillman. He went to Hillsdale. Small school there. Lisa Bonet represent. That dude can play, and it was so much fun watching him, because I didn't hear a lot about him in the fall. Had a really good Senior Bowl, and I think when he gets to Indy, he's going to run extremely well there as well. And then folks are going to have to go back and say, oh, who is this Isaac Tesla guy? And I think he has an opportunity to be a top 100 pick, I think, by the time it's all said and done.
You know, I was getting my hair done a couple weeks ago, and my hairdresser actually put on A Different World on Netflix while she was doing it. So I am proud to have understood that reference. I think it's the first time that you've made a reference that I can grasp. So I'm happy that we're on the same page when it comes to that. Ryan, it seems like, you know, at the Combine, there's always one position group that stands out. Last year, it was clearly the quarterbacks. This year, it kind of is feeling like it's the edge rushers. Abdul Carter is the name that will dominate the headlines, but you got guys like James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, a couple other guys as well. Can you just speak to the depth that we'll see at the edge rusher position this year that teams will have a chance to pick from?
It is so deep. It's deeper than I can remember in recent history, Haley. And you talked about Abdul Carter, freakish athlete, but every other name on that list is going to be just as close a freakish athlete as Abdul Carter. And we're going to have dudes running in the 4.5s. We're going to have dudes running in the 4.4s. We're going to have guys that weigh 280 pounds and run like they're wide receivers. And oh, by the way, all these guys, especially on this list you're looking at here on the graphic, those dudes can ball out. And here's some other names to keep an eye on. Shamar Stewart's 280 plus. Darius Robinson was a first-round pick last year at about that height and weight for Arizona. I think Shamar is going to be a better player. Nick Scorton, his teammate at Texas A&M, is 265 plus. Princely Umanmielen is insanely athletic. You mentioned James Pierce Jr. And then Mike Green is one of my favorite players in this draft class. UVA transferred to Marshall, went to the same high school as Lawrence Taylor, and he may have had, no exaggeration here, and I do like to exaggerate a lot when I talk about these players, the best one-on-one pass rush rep in Senior Bowl history a few weeks ago, and that sort of solidified to me that he has a chance to be really special at the next level. All
right, we can't wait to see it all get underway. Ryan, enjoy the St. Elmo shrimp out there and the vibes. Don't stay out too late, though, because I know Pete Prisco likes to keep you out past your bedtime. Ryan Wilson getting us ready for the upcoming Scouting Combine. You know who else is getting us hyped for the draft? Dare I say the most well-traveled man for CBS Sports. Our Emory Hunt looking good, feeling good, and on the hunt for some hidden gems. He joins us now to tell us who he's got his eye on ahead of the Combine. Emory, you've been to the Hula Bowl, I should say. You've been to the USL. You've been to Canada. You even did some European football over the summer. So you have truly seen it all. Ryan laid it out for us, some wide receivers maybe that he is watching, but you've got a couple that are maybe under the radar as well. This next guy, or first guy, I should say, is drawing some comparisons to Deebo Samuel. So tell us who you're on the hunt for when it comes to the Combine next week.
Well, Haley, when you are looking at the Combine and looking at guys that can really impress and make a name for themselves, you look at who can do more than one thing. Savion Williams out of TCU has lined up at Wildcat quarterback. He's lined up outside as a receiver. He can go inside as a slot player. He can win deep down the field. He could win, take a short pass a long way. So he can do a lot of things. The fact that he's 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, and is a Wildcat quarterback that can run downhill, and in some cases, he is their short yardage and goal line back. When you have someone with that many different skill sets, wearing that many different hats, and can also fly, reminds me a lot of Cordero Patterson and how they utilize him at Tennessee and how we started to see him utilized in the NFL before he settled in at running back. But I think Williams is someone that can legitimately play wide receiver because he can affect the game deep down the field as a true wide receiver inside the red zone, but also put the ball in his hands if you get down there as a Wildcat guy like Taysom Hill.
Another wide receiver that's caught your attention is a Florida man, and not the kind of Florida man that's missing his teeth or fighting gators on the side of the road. Emory, this is a Florida man that could strike some fear into opposing DBs if they're not careful. That Florida man is Elijah Badger. Tell us a little bit more about him.
I thought you was going to play with the last name Badger because that was a layup for you. But you're right. Elijah Badger is someone that I've been tracking for a while. This is when he was at Arizona State, Haley. He led the conference, the Pac-12 at the time, in kickoff return yards. And when you're returning kicks and punts, that's two different skill sets. Is not the same thing. If you're returning punts, you're more quick than fast. But if you're returning kickoffs, you're blazing fast. So that speaks volumes about his speed. He goes to Florida. He's another one of these guys that can play inside or outside as a slot guy. But when I was at the Hula Bowl, he had a great week there. Physical presence, someone that you could probably get involved in a wide receiver run game on jet sweeps and things of that nature because he's tough to bring down. You go and watch his game this past season against LSU. He had a big-time catch, got them down to the 1-yard line. He's tough to really cover when going on those over routes. So when you utilize his speed going east and west, it's a problem. I think he's going to run 4.4 in a 40-yard dash, be one of those surprise players that runs extremely fast at his size.
All right, I'm going to have to Google how fast Badgers can actually run, and then we'll do a test to see if they can match up to that 4-4. Our Emory Hunt, no football too big or too small for that man, bringing us some hidden gems in this year's draft class. Emory, we certainly appreciate it.